We dive into authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
him. And so then the defense is kind of like trying to piece by piece recount Jane's kind of in the closet and how she into a large dress and why was she still wearing heels and those types of things. And the defense throughout this was kind of pointing out that Diddy didn't put his hands on her up until it became a certain point. And so initially the defense was kind of like, okay, well, Diddy's just lines. He was just following you through him, but saying things along the lines of, are you not going to talk to me? But from Jane's perspective, she was saying that even throughout all of this, he was still kicking down her doors, because remember, under her direct testimony, the jury saw photos of her broken down doors, or the doors that were just either kicked through or hit through by Diddy. And Jane was telling Diddy to leave and that she hated him. And then again, the defense was going into, okay, well, why were you still wearing like a baggy dress and heels and not wearing activewear? You're someone that works out, so why wouldn't you change into just, I guess, active as opposed to what she ended up wearing? And so it felt like the defense at that point was kind of trying to imply that Jane was the agitator in this situation. She was first. She was the one who threw the glass first, and that Diddy around this time frame, because this, if you think about it also in context, it's June of 2024. This was weeks after the CNN video came out that showed the brutal assault video of Cassie and Diddy at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. So it felt like at times, Jesse, that the defense was trying to imply that he was still feeling the stress from the CNN video being released, and maybe that is why he had that particular reaction. And so Jane was saying that Diddy did end up kicking her and putting her in a chokehold, and then a little bit later in her testimony, she kind of she explained that the chokehold was through his arm, and because the defense was like, well, we're seeing this video of 5 days later after this particular incident, and you don't have any finger marks around your neck. It doesn't seem like he strangled you doing this, but instead Jane was explaining that Diddy kind of grabbed her by the arm, put her up in a chokehold where she just was kind of just up in the air type of thing. And so the defense was pointing out that she had no discoloration on her neck, but then the defense was saying hours after, or after she was hiding for hours, I should say, that she kept on calling Diddy names, and that Diddy, when she came back from hiding for a few hours, because remember she said that she hid behind a wall for like 2 hours, that after she came back that she was still calling him names. But even after Diddy was calling her names, that he didn't kick her during that time. And it was only while they were on the patio where Jane had punched Diddy in the back of the head. So then Diddy had punched her back and punched her in the eye and punched her in the forehead. And Diddy told her something along the
take it off mute. Sorry, Sipper. Oh, we're catching up on all DDTs. It's Monday morning. So while you guys are at work, having y'all's business, running y'all's errands, I am working and doing the same thing. Okay, so 50 Cent baby mama and Diddy were, brawling it out. It appears that, as Miss Milner is saying right now, they were fighting, punching, kicking, scratching, and biting, y'all. What do y'all think about that? Drop it down in the chat. And also, they're about to lock Diddy up for some time for domestic violence in the feds. It's a new day, y'all. Watch your back, watch your goddamn back. Even in the shower, watch your goddamn back. We're up with Diddy News. Day 20 through 2024. When you come in, remember, keep your teacups up. They're going to get filled with some Diddy teas with Tanisha Talks Teas. And like and subscribe.
The lines of, you're trying to take my kids away from me, or trying to take me away from my kids. And so it seemed like, again, from the defense's perspective, I think they were trying to frame this as, okay, well, maybe you're trying to look for something out of this because you just saw this hotel video that came out just weeks ago, and now you're instigating a fight that seemingly kind of came out of nowhere, and you're trying to possibly get something out of it. And so then they kind of got into a little bit more about it after the lunch break, and just that during this time time frame, Jane had gotten a hold of the other woman that was allegedly on this family trip, and that this other woman was telling her mean things. Jane was telling her mean things, and then how Jane had to take a shower afterwards, but then Diddy kept slapping her and those types of things. And then Diddy had told her, okay, we have never fought like this. Now that this lawsuit comes out, now you want to attack me. And so I feel like that's where the defense kind of really just was like, okay, it seems like you did have kind of a reason for doing this. And then they got into a fight just about how Jane was over in Vegas for that trip in January of 2024, and and that even after the fight, Jane had to put on a hotel night outfit, and then Diddy took Jane's phone to text Anton. Then Diddy saw a message between Jane and Anton about that mutual friend, that being the unnamed rapper that she went on the Vegas trip with. Anton came over about 45 minutes later, according to Jane. At first, Jane and Anton were just kind of making small talk, but then the defense is kind of like, okay, well, when did you have time to put on makeup? You say that you put on makeup to cover up your bruises. And then it was like, okay, well, at any point you could have possibly just drove away and left. You could have left with your car, and when you were trying to grab that had happened during this night. But I think one thing that also stands out is that when Anton had arrived, Diddy and Jane went into a separate room in her home, and Diddy was still upset about this mutual friend that Jane had saw in Vegas, and Diddy told her, how could you go to another man's freak off? Go out there and F him, that being the entertainer that was still inside Jane's home. And then Jane told Diddy no, and then Diddy said, okay, well, is this coercion? And so what ended up happening, Jane took an ecstasy pill. She ended up giving this particular entertainer oral sex. Diddy had no interaction with Anton. During this, they ended up cleaning up the glass before Anton even came over, and that was just kind of the gist. And I know that was kind of a lot, but I feel like the defense's entire point of just this particular piece of what had happened that night was just the reaction from the CNN video.
Well, the prosecution's banking it on being one of the more clear-cut cases of force being used to pressure her into a commercial sex act. And there seems to be the defense saying there's a lot more context, and maybe, and I think it was really interesting when you said, did she have a motivation to instigate this for personal benefit after the tape came out of him appearing to beat up Cassie Ventura? I think that's a really interesting point. But look, the defense was very keen on trying to say today, and during the course of their cross-examination for the last day or so, 2 days or so, that she consented to this. She consented to the hotel nights, that she had all this love for Sean Combs. What came out today? I mean, I know there was a text to the effect of, I feel as your lover, I wanted to please you, and I pushed through, and she wanted to cuddle with him. And then there was this whole back and forth about, did she buy him a TV to watch certain movies together?
So Jane said, according to her, that she bought this portable TV so that way that, yes, she and Diddy could watch their movie nights. But she also explained that she and Diddy, or this was a way for her not to have sex with other men for these hotel nights. So instead of having to complete these hotel nights or do these hotel nights, instead she was like, okay, well, I bought him a portable TV screen that was, I guess, the size of just like kind of a computer monitor, so that way the two could watch their videos together, and instead of her having to actually do the sexual acts with other men. But even as far as just the text messages go too, the defense was showing, or showing the jury, I should say, just different text exhibits. For example, on December 20th of 2023, and this is around the time frame that Diddy had made this note saying that he didn't know how she felt about her wanting to do these hotel nights, where Jane is saying, you only reached out to me because you're waiting for someone else to come over. Diddy said, well, can you please take quiet time to read everything that I said? Thank you, I love you. And Jane was saying that there were moments of intense back and forth during this time period. She said, this was a really emotional time frame for us. I really hit my wall here. Come to find out, another woman had the same experience with him, and that being Cassie, when she had just initially reached she had initially filed her lawsuit, and then obviously it was settled the next day. But that there was still love and pain there, because I think one question that might be on the juror's mind is that you're saying that Cassie's lawsuit affected you so much. You two were on an off period. Why didn't that off period just stay as is? And why did you continue to see him, getting back together as just a couple months later on February of 2024. And then there were just other text messages where the jury heard an audio message from Diddy December of 2023, where Diddy is saying, okay, we should really focus on us at the end of the day. What can we do to make you feel better? Let's get to the solution, move on with your life so that way you don't feel like I wasted your life, because Jane around this time was just saying that she was kind of in her mid to late 30s-ish, and that she felt like she wasted like some of the best years of her life having to do these hotel nights, and that she could have been treated better by other people. And so then the jury was 23, where Diddy is again asking, so what's the solution? We're going into a new year. I don't want to fight. And Jane is saying, well, I tolerated and dimmed myself for you, Puff. Don't discredit me. Under direct, Jane had said that Diddy told her that Diddy had told her to charge her for her resentment, and that's where Jane was saying, okay, well, I wasted my time, and that wasted time equal to the amount of $100,000. And so Jane was explaining that she still wasn't planning on filing a lawsuit, and that she had actually told some of her unnamed friends just about Diddy, and that one friend told her that Jane had set the tone for their relationship. The defense was also bringing messages and even some videos and showing them to the jury, as far as just even post this June fight that had happened in 2024, where just a few days later it seemed like everything was kind of back to normal for Jane and Diddy, where she went over to Diddy's house. They were taking videos together. It seemed like the defense was trying to imply that Diddy was trying to break up with her, and that Jane at the end of the day was kind of like, I guess, not necessarily fine with it, but she and Diddy were still hanging out together, because the jury saw this particular video. We were able to hear this video where Jane is calling Diddy her bestie, and that they're laughing together. And again, this was post this June altercation, but Diddy told her that they'll break up but still be best friends, and that even after the altercation had happened in June, that Diddy and Jane were together intimately post this incident that happened June 18th, June 19th. However, they were together intimately with no entertainer. And so there were just other points during her cross-examination where the defense was kind of pointing out that there were times that an entertainer wasn't involved. There were times that Diddy and Jane, both respectively, were just saying how much they loved and missed one another, and those types of things. There were points where the defense gave all the jurors headphones so that way they could hear particular voice notes that were sent to Jane and sent to from Diddy too. And I was kind of at first unsure why these particular voice notes weren't just being played aloud for all of us to hear. But I think because of the redactions that needed to be had in terms of just personal matters relating to Jane specifically, as involving her child and even her child's father, as well as possibly this unnamed rapper that went to the 2024 Vegas trip in January. I think that's kind of what had made up for why the headphones were given to the jurors and to the witness and to both parties, as opposed to us listening to all of it.
Yeah, I saw the little reporting that, I mean, that the father of her child is wealthy, and, we wonder who that could be. There's been social media speculation about who that could be. But it is interesting to hear this testimony about, whether or not it was consensual, and whether or not we have a clear-cut case of a sex trafficker victim relationship. I understand there was testimony where she even said she missed Paul, right? Diddy's trainer, one of the guys who was allegedly paid to have this sex work with them. By the way, talking about big names, didn't it come up Christina Coram, who, by the way, apparently is not going to testify? We thought that she was going to be a key witness during the course of this trial, Sean Combs, former chief of staff. Jane and Christina Coram not on the same page, right? She didn't like her, or she felt Coram didn't like her.
Yeah, so KK was mentioned a little bit towards the end of Jane's cross-examination, where the jury was still wearing their headphones. They were hearing these different voice notes that unfortunately we couldn't hear in the gallery ourselves. But what we did hear is just kind of the transcripts, and I was trying to write them as fast as I could. There was a lot more that was said than what I actually wrote down, but it seemed like the defense was trying to imply that Jane was really just upset just as far as jealousy goes, and just how the other women that were in Diddy's life were treated one way, whereas she was treated a different way. And so Jane had told Diddy, I should have known after the first year that there wouldn't be a trip. And Diddy told Jane, well, don't get it twisted, baby. I still have love for you. I'm dealing with this SHIT with my mom and what's on the news. Because again, context, this was July of 2024, just a couple months after Diddy's homes were raided. A lot of media press about the various lawsuits that have been filed against him, but even just months after Cassie's lawsuit. So Diddy is kind of explaining that he's just dealing with a lot of stuff. His mom was sick, all the stuff that was going on the news, and just saying that he can't deal with her, pretty much saying and being upset that he's not taking her on a trip right now. But Jane had told Diddy, okay, well, trust has been broken on both ends. You and KK, that being Christina Coram, would have talked yourself into paranoia, because she implied under, I think it was either the cross-examination or the start of the cross-examination, where Jane flat out said that she didn't believe that Christina Coram even really liked her. And so then the defense kind of really brought up Jane and her finances, her career, what she does as far as OnlyFans go, and that around July of 2024 that Diddy brought up her OnlyFans and the voice note. Again, we didn't hear this particular voice note, but that Jane had been doing OnlyFans around this time period for a few months at this point. And so Diddy told Jane that he doesn't care about them, and I think he was talking about the other women, and Jane was saying, well, why do we always do hotel nights and never traveled privately? Did the other girls pressure you for more trips? And so Diddy also told Jane that you are sneaky and curious. You should be free. I wish you the best, love. And Jane told Diddy, well, I went to a birthday, and this is kind of bringing back that Vegas trip that happened in January of that same year. I didn't even have anything post-worthy from our relationship. It was my fault for doing things that didn't align with me to impress you. I had pent-up frustration, and Diddy is telling Jane, well, let's just kind of take a break from one another. And Jane told Diddy, well, my dumb ASS thought if I effed more that I would get a trip. And so I think the defense was trying to imply that, you know, she had some kind of perks that she was getting out of doing these hotel nights, and that she was doing them willingly and possibly in exchange for being treated like a girlfriend. And she has expressed this multiple times while doing her testimony, where she just felt like she just wanted the love and she wanted the affection, that the only reason she did the hotel nights was because of the affection that she and Diddy shared with one another before it. Then the entertainer would come. Then after the entertainer left, that she and Diddy would be alone together, and they would have their private moments, and that those were the special things that she liked about the hotel nights, not necessarily having sex with other men, but it was just the time that she had spent with Diddy all together. And so I thought that there was going to be a point where they were going to talk about Diddy's arrest, how she felt about Diddy's arrest, but really the cross-examination kind of ended with Jane talking about this moment where Diddy threw water on her. And the defense was kind of like, well, why didn't you bring this up beforehand? And you'd only brought this up June 1st of 2025 in your first meeting with the government. And so Tenny was kind of like, okay, well, that was just 5 days before you had testified. And Jane was saying, yes, it was. And so they really ended her cross-examination going into August 2nd of 2020, or excuse me, August 6th of 2024. Jane and Diddy kind of had a fight. Jane told Diddy, I appreciate and love you so much. You're so right. I'm back in love with your behind. You hit me with the pill, that being an ecstasy pill. The love energy is so undefinable. It's electric. And Diddy told Jane.
All right. Sorry, guys. I am doing my little shopping for the week at Wally World. Have great deals at Walmart, guys. So make sure you get out and get some great deals. Tanisha Talks Tea. So we're listening to more of the XX, occult, and mysterious rapper that they had during freakouts and stuff. 50 Cent Baby Mama testimony, just reviewing all of that. What do y'all think about her being the, one of the witnesses in the Diddy trial? Like, that is crazy. 50 Cent's baby's mama, y'all. That is crazy work.
That she was in the Hall of Fame, and then they kind of referred to themselves as Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, and they were sending GIFs and emojis to one another, because there are times where they just send a lot of emojis to one another, but that's a modern relationship, right? But that around this time period, because again, context is everything. This is about a month before Diddy's arrest, that Diddy told Jane to find a therapist, not being a couples therapist. So even a month before their arrest, it seems like, despite how she was saying she felt around December of 2023, that as far as even Diddy being, or it was the plan for Diddy to be arrested, I should say, that she was still kind of fine with how things were within their relationship. Yes, there were up and downs, but it seemed like she was kind of in it for the long run with him until his ultimate arrest the following month.
Yeah, and I know that she basically said that they loved each other. There was toxic
Miss
stuff
Milner
going
know how to
on.
break
I mean,
it
look, it'll
down.
be for the jury to determine.
You know how to go in there, chop, bring. How does the song go, y'all? Break it down, chop it up, bring it back. Okay, however the song go by Yo Gotti, y'all. She know how to go in there and get that done. So that's Miss Milner, Elizabeth Milner on Sidebar, y'all, with Jesse Weber. Now, Jesse Weber be kind of throwing me for a slant sometimes, y'all. You never really know how he gonna go. Like one day he'll be, I don't really know about what I heard today coming out of the trial of Diddy. And then he'll be on the side of, yeah, Diddy gonna get some time, man. You know what I'm saying? I think these charges are gonna get him some time, man. So we just don't really know with Jesse Weber, but he gives us the tease, y'all. This shit is crazy on, 50 Cent, baby. I just can't. Like, we're gonna have to do a whole breakdown and review of the time of her with 50 Cent and Diddy. We're gonna have to do a whole little talking tea table topic on that, y'all. So I'm gonna have to, get that into the, workings, inner workings of breaking that down and put a whole little tea talk together for y'all, okay? Because that is crazy to me.
Was he using fraudulent methods or coercion or pressure on her to get her to engage in sex acts with these men and in different locations? And maybe that does amount to sex trafficking, or is this more of a transactional, loving, toxic, ugly relationship that's not really a federal crime? It's very, very gray, very, very complicated. But then
see, Jesse Weber, Sidebar, Law and Crime. Okay, we're paying homage to this. We always use him as a reference through all of the, fair acts of commentary usage. Now he's saying that's not really acts of a federal crime. But just a minute ago on the Law and Crime Network side of the show, it was he's going to get time for transportation or prostitution, la, 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 la. So, like, you just never really know where Jesse Weber's going to fall. And I understand, like, before the trial started, I was like, Diddy is a monster. He created his own monster ball. Y'all know Diddy played in that movie Monster Ball with Halle Berry, where he got convicted of murder in the Deep South, and they executed him by electric chair. And I'm like, this nigga done created his real life monster ball. You can go check that out on my Facebook. I think I uploaded it to YouTube. I'm not sure. But not for nothing, it was a great, tea talk or whatever. So, like, it's this Diddy trial is wild, y'all. We still got lots more trials to cover. We got Smokey Robinson trial. We got Shannon Sharp trial. We got the Carmelo Anthony trial. We got the man that killed the officer, because they killed his son a couple days prior in a shooting of a carjacking or car suspicion of stolen car. We got some trials to cover, y'all. So we're busy. We are busy. We're going to be talking a lot of teas, y'all. Thank you so much for subscribing. When you come in, keep your teacups lifted so they can be filled with the tea we're talking for the day. And remember, when you do so, you pay us back in a blessing by liking and subscribing. Thank you. Let's talk this tea. Let's get it.
It became time for the prosecution to try to clean up this testimony. It's redirect. So now you have the prosecution asking her questions once again. What was the focus of the redirect by the prosecution?
Well, it was done by AUSA Marine Comey, and she really kind of was honing in on just everything that the defense was trying to poke holes at, as far as just her wanting to do these hotel nights and her willingness to do these hotel nights. So right off the bat, Marine Comey is showing the jury texts from Jane to Diddy where she's saying, I know what you want, baby. I'm just not in the mood. Don't want to make you mad. And Diddy is responding, all good, because under cross-examination, the defense was like saying, oh, okay, Diddy's saying all good. So he's listening to you. This wasn't coercion. You weren't forced to do this. He said all good. But then Diddy had text messaged Paul, one of the entertainers that they used, about an hour and a half later saying, I need you to persuade her. And so I think that was the point where the government is saying, okay, well, even outside of him telling you everything's all good, you don't have to do these hotel nights, that Diddy went out of his way to text Paul to be like, okay, I need you to persuade Jane to do this hotel night. And Jane, even while she was on the stand for this redirect moment, said she never saw this text message before. And so then Maureen Comey is asking about these kind of lovey-dovey messages that were sent in March of 2023 after Jane and Diddy went on their Turks and Caicos trip, because Jane thought that this was a makeup trip for her birthday that year, and she thought it was just going to be the two of them together. And then an entertainer came, and so the jury saw these text messages from March 19th of 2023, and these were messages from Jane to Paul, where Jane had told Paul, thanks again for coming over. I told him I was overwhelmed to perform. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm sleepy, and I'm sore. And then to insult me about my bracelet, because during this particular trip, Diddy had given her a very expensive and pricey bracelet, and Jane was explaining that she felt like she was given this bracelet just as a way for her to be pushed to perform during a hotel night. And so she was telling Paul that Diddy was insulting her about her bracelet, and in that moment, he didn't make me feel human. What do you expect from a woman after 24 hours and drugs? We tried to argue about it last night, but he felt like he did nothing wrong, because this entire trip was for the purpose of the two reconnecting again. But Jane was expressing that she didn't want to do a hotel night. She didn't want to be doing this. However, Diddy kind of surprised her with this and made her do this type of thing. And so as far as why she sent these lovey-dovey messages even after the Turks and Caicos trip, Jane was explaining that he being Diddy, is just so good at showering me with affection. I was able to throw the other stuff to the side because, I was saying yesterday when we were talking about just all the text messages that we saw under Cross, where Jane is really expressing her love and affection for Diddy, it seems like, she expressed this during her testimony too, that she really just loves love, and she loves affection, and she loves romance and all this stuff, and that she likes to please her partners in any type of way. And so it felt like Jane was trying to explain that even though she's sending these messages, even after not wanting to do these hotel nights with other men and not wanting to have sex with these other men, that she would still just throw this to the side, try to forget about it, because she just really wanted the love and affection from her partner. And so then Maureen Comey brought it back to December of 2021. This is the initial stages of their relationship, where Diddy was upset with Jane because Jane wanted to give Don, the entertainer or the escort, a condom, and that no condom was used in that particular hotel night because Diddy didn't like the idea of the entertainers or the escorts wearing condoms while he was watching this. And so then they brought up the text messages between Jane and Cabral, where Jane was saying that she always sent these kind of sexually explicit messages and these really kind of like nice messages to the escorts or the entertainers, and that every time she was in communication with them, Diddy was always around. While he wasn't the one sending the messages, that he was always there and very present. And so Jane was explaining that she never wanted to have sex with Cabral, that she only pretended to enjoy having sex with these entertainers because she was putting on a show for Sean. And so then they kind of get into the extortion, that being Cabral threatening to release one of the sexually explicit videos that was accidentally recorded on his phone, and he ended up selling it to a media company that went unnamed, so we don't know who this media company is, but that Cabral had extorted her for money. And this comes after the Homeland Security investigation raise. And then December of 2023, Diddy also threatened to release sexually explicit videos of Jane as well, and that Jane expressed that she was scared that this would happen. This is a pretty relatively quick time frame, because again, context, Diddy is also telling Jane that he never understood how she felt, but then Jane is telling Diddy in this message that the government was trying to introduce to the jury, but unfortunately they weren't able to see it, that Jane was expressing that she didn't want to be doing these hotel nights. So to hear Jane say under redirect that still in that same month Diddy was threatening to release sexually explicit videos of her too, it was just kind of like, wow. I think the government really was trying to really kind of bring in everything together here. And so even as far as just Jane reading in between the lines and the undertones that Diddy would send to her, as far as the "what do you want to do tonight" text, Jane always interpreted that him implying that, or even texting her that, meant that she should set up a hotel night. And she said, I would try to navigate the night to do something else. So she would want to do other things. And she said that even though Diddy didn't want entertainers at his house, that they still had entertainers at his home and at his various homes and at Jane's home too. And she said that she wished she could forget all these hotel nights. And so then she got a little kind of emotional as far as when they got to the jealousy angle of everything, because, and I feel like that's just kind of what maybe that gray area of the confusing point, right? Like a lot of people are hearing just about the various women that Diddy is dating around this time period. And it seems like at some points that Jane was fine doing these hotel nights if she was getting the other perks that the other women were getting, such as the trips, such as the nice gifts, such as being able to express their love publicly and on social media. And so Jane was getting kind of emotional just recalling the pressure she felt like she had to do in order to complete these hotel nights that the other women didn't have to do. She said, I had to carry that impossible pressure, and she's getting emotional while on the stand, tearing up and crying a little bit. She said, I was asked to hold all that pressure. And she said that she brought up the hotel nights and the jealousy because under the cross-examination, there was one point where Diddy was on a trip with Young Miami and Jane was like, okay, well, you better get your butt back here or else I'm not going to do a hotel night with you. But Jane was saying that she just kind of brought this up, and she said, why do I have to compromise my boundaries? Why am I always being treated like this? And they weren't. And so then the redirect kind of ended just a little bit about the vulnerability that she and Sean Combs had as far as that he wasn't affectionate with he made Jane do oral sex on Anton, the entertainer, after their physical fight, that he wasn't loving after their fight that they had in June, that he made her take a pill and forced her to take the pill because she was ruining the night. And so I feel like the government did the best that they could to really get together the redirect after seeing that cross-examination. But I think when that recross happened, I think it was a little like, ooh, they're back. And Tenny was a little more fierce than she was under the cross-examination, to the point where I was kind of like, ooh,
well, let's
not
talk
going
about
as
that.
well as I think maybe the government would have liked. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this. So, yeah, I think there are certain messages that really help the government's case where she says, I'm not a robot, I'm not a porn star, I don't want to be mistreated, and things like that. And really where she talks about how he's tying the hotel nights to him paying rent. So are you using financial control to get what you want? The idea of him threatening to release sex tapes, very similar to Cassie. Is that a form of coercion to get what he wants? But I will tell you, when it was time for the defense to then recross her, right, that felt, like you said, very tense. It felt to me like she wanted to get off the stand. It felt to me she's had enough. Did you get that sense? I mean, it was a little combative, right?
Yeah. It was, because I think for the initial points of the defense's cross-examination of Jane, Tenny Garagos was really kind of approaching it like the two were old friends, that they were just good girlfriends, and she was just asking her questions like a friend would ask. But under this recross, Tenny was kind of like, let's just get to the point and let's get this out of the way. And Jane, I think, too, was kind of like, I've been on the stand for multiple days at this point. I'm ready to stop talking about this. I'm ready to stop talking about this in front of people, even though her identity is concealed. But I think as far as just, you could tell her apprehension of as far as
we know who Jane Doe is. Too many things have came up in this trial to let us know this is 50 Cent baby mama.
Testifying and recalling all of this. But as far as the recross goes, the defense was kind of like, okay, well, after the June 18th, June 19th fight, you could have driven off at any point, but you didn't. Because you hadn't taken any drugs at that time. The alcohol had worn off by that time period. You could have drove off in your car at any chance, but instead what you did was you got in your car and you let in an entertainer into your hotel room. And so the defense was saying that Anton, the entertainer that they used, didn't have Diddy's number. He had Jane's number, but Jane was saying that it was Diddy, the one who used her phone to get in communication with Anton. Then around this time frame too, Jane was being represented by criminal counsel, and she had a lawyer that she didn't even reach out to after this particular incident. And so then they also pointed out that around this time frame, this was a couple months after, or even possibly a couple weeks after Diddy's homes were raided by Homeland Security investigators, and that they left a card, and Jane didn't use this particular card or contact information to reach out to investigators to report this incident either. And so then the defense was saying that she didn't even tell Anton not to come in, that at any point she could have told Anton that she doesn't want him in her home, that he could have left at any time, again, also after this June 18th, 19 incident. And then the defense was kind of like, okay, well, do you consider yourself a strong woman? You work out every day, you're in good shape, you're in good health. And Jane is saying yes, and then there's kind of like a long pause, and then she kind of utters, but a woman's strength doesn't override a man's. And so I was kind of like, ooh, there's just a little bit of sass with her tone there when she had even said that. And then the defense brought up that Jane had also said not so nice things about Diddy himself, where she called him a pedophile and she called him a monster, and that she threw candles at him and the wax got on him, and glasses at him. And then the defense brings up that Jane reached out to Cabral to recommend him to this unnamed rapper who was in the lifestyle when she and Diddy weren't together, also kind of insinuating that she wasn't only reaching out to these entertainers or these escorts only when she was with Diddy, that she would do it outside of their relationship too. And then obviously the defense is going to bring up her finances. So they were saying that Jane didn't, because at the end of her redirect, let me just back up just a little bit, under her redirect, AUSA Marine Comey was like, okay, would you trade in all the gifts and presents and everything in as far as not having to endure the treatment that you got and endure having to have sex with other men and multiple men at some times during these hotel nights? And then the defense was kind of, before I get to what the defense said, Jane said, yes, she would give it all back in order not to do these hotel nights with other men. So then the defense was like, okay, well, does that apply to your home too? The home that you live at with your child? And then Jane also gives a long pause here where she's kind of like, that's kind of a hard question to answer. And so then the defense brings up how much she's making as an OnlyFans creator, where she's making upwards of $10,000, even more a month doing this. And this is a month. And so because her rent is $10,000 a month, I think they were trying to insinuate that she could pay for her own rent if she wanted to, but then she's still catching up on all the debt that she had cured, I should say. Sorry about that. And then also that the defense was pointing out that she gets more than $5,000 a month also in child support. So just off those numbers alone, she's kind of getting more than $15,000 a month. Does she really need the money from Diddy too? But from Jane's perspective, she says it's kind of hard to give up the home that she and her child have made a home. They made a home into that. And so really, I feel like there were points, even I was kind of looking at the jurors to get their feel of everything. And I think maybe they were kind of, I don't want to say pleased, but I think they were kind of like, oh, whoa, Tenny can come at you a little aggressively, because again, her approach initially was just so soft, very nice and kind, but then under that recross, Tenny was just kind of like, okay, well, she brought a little Mark Garagos there a little bit, and she was her daughter's, her father's daughter there.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, I'm looking right now, it just came in, there are courtroom sketches. Did Jane hug Tenny Garagos, go up to the table and put her arm on her? I mean, if I'm looking at these the right way, yes. Is that what happened?
Yes, because Jesse, that was kind of the big moment at the end of the day where we were, because after seeing that recross, I was kind of like, there's no way that Jane has maybe any nice feelings, I guess, towards the defense. But what we did see is her getting off the stand, and she took a little bit of a while to get off the witness stand. And then we were like, okay, what's happening? And then all of a sudden I see her bent over hugging Tenny Garagos, and Tenny, I don't think, was really expecting that, because from what I could see of her, she had no reaction or movement or hugged her back. Right. And so we were kind of like all whispering to one another, we were like, did she hug AUSA Marine Comey? Did she hug anybody else? What was going on? From what we know, we don't believe she hugged Marine Comey too, but it was weird that after that recross that she did hug Tenny Garagos. It's unclear if Jane also whispered something to her or what was said during that, but it was kind of an interesting moment that happened at the end of the day that had a lot of us kind of like scratching our head.
What did Diddy do? Was he looking at this?
I think I was so focused on Jane hugging Tenny, I didn't even see him there, because also Marshall was standing in my way too. So I don't know, and I don't know also if maybe Jane was hugging Tenny specifically to kind of have it like translate a little bit to the defendant. But yeah, it was kind of a very interesting moment. I wish I got Diddy's reaction to that.
Yeah, that is shocking to say the least. Okay, before we wrap things up real quick, right after she leaves the stand, we kind of get an idea of this summary witness, right? So we want to, I believe, going to be the last witness for the prosecution. And a summary witness really, typically they're used when you have a lot of evidence, like a lot of voluminous, complex evidence or data, and you can't go through all of it, so they summarize what it is. Did we get a sense of what this information is? Because if I had to be a betting man, if I had to guess why they're doing this, they still need to fit a piece of the puzzle of racketeering, right? To say that this was a criminal enterprise, he had people that he was working with, co-conspirators to commit crimes, cover them up, engage in this pattern of abuse of women. Everybody was on the same page. I got to imagine that's where they're going with this summary witness, right?
Yeah, and I think also what's interesting, Jesse, is that they're saying that the summary witness who might testify tomorrow or even possibly Monday might be one of the first summary witnesses. So we don't know if it'll be just that summary witness or possibly more summary witnesses. But these conversations were happened. It was the end of the day outside of the presence of the jury, but we did kind of get a feel as far as what these various text exhibits are and who they're between. So, for example, the government wanted to use text messages from Diddy staff, which included Christina Quorum and Fahim and other people who were talking about securing cash for Diddy because they say it goes to the enterprise. Now, obviously, the defense objects to it. They say that the jury would draw inference from this, suggesting that this message and these messages, because I think it was like 49 pages of text messages, would imply that the defendant is guilty and that they say it's prejudicial. Whereas the government says that this shows this particular document, that being the text messages, show that the defendant was requesting money. And so what ended up happening, the judge overruled the defense's objection. So those text messages will be shown in. However, there are text messages between D-Rock and Fahim where Diddy is instructing Fahim, one of Diddy's staffers, to count, I think it was like $1 million in cash that he had in his safe. And the defense was like, well, this has limited probative value, and the jury will also draw negative inference from it because of just the amount of money. And so the judge sided with the defense in that aspect, and that objection was sustained. But there were some text messages between D-Rock and Cassie in the 2017 time period, where Cassie told D-Rock that her door was broken down because of Diddy, that she didn't feel safe inside her home, that Diddy had taken her house keys. And the defense was like, well, there hasn't been enough foundation set, but the judge ruled to overrule that objection, so those text messages will be shown in front of the jury. Then there were some text messages between this man named Guido, who was a drug dealer that another witness testified to, and these messages were between Fahim, where it was 7 long pages of messages, where it was kind of funny. At one point, the judge was like, what does Diddy purchasing flour have anything to do with this case? And then Christy Slavic, one of the AUSAs, one of the prosecutors, was just kind of like, Your Honor, flour means marijuana, and that kind of is talking about Diddy wanting to purchase drugs and a large amount of drugs. And then there was kind of a chuckle in the courtroom because then everyone's like, oh, the flour. And so the objection was overruled, so the jury will see those text exhibits. And then the final one was just about this ledger that Fahim had in his phone, where it was just all about the incoming and outgoing cash. And I think the government really wanted this particular piece of evidence in. However, the judge overruled that, or the judge sustained that objection. So unfortunately, the jury won't be able to see this ledger full of incoming and outgoing cash.
It's interesting, you might not have the testimony of these individuals, but you might have the receipts and the text messages, and maybe that's the value that they're looking at. Because we all thought that we were going to hear from more individuals, more of the alleged inner circle of Sean Combs for this racketeering conspiracy charge. Maybe not. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much. Great reporting as always. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcast. We have learned a lot more about the complicated relationship between Sean Diddy Combs and Jane, another alleged victim in this sex trafficking, racketeering, and prostitution case. From audio tapes to texts to payments to Homeland Security searches to extortion to alleged violence, what exactly happened in court today, and how does it fit into the overall case? Let's talk to our in-court reporter, Law and Crime's Elizabeth Milner, to get to the bottom of it. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, a lot to get into when it comes to Jane's testimony, because the last we discussed, she was testifying about these hotel nights, these debauchery nights, that she would be performing sex acts with other men in front of Sean Combs. And she even alleged that she was tasked with doing this after she threw up and even after she was physically exhausted. She claims she vocalized in different ways to Sean Combs, her partner, how she didn't want to keep on doing this. She testified that Combs gave her cash and gifts and paid for her rent, but it's complicated. It's complicated by her messages to Sean Combs. It's complicated by her testimony that she was with Combs basically a few weeks up until his arrest. And you also have to wonder, is it also complicated with what she said today, including new allegations of violence that have changed the trajectory of her testimony? So a lot to get into with what happened today. Let me bring on Elizabeth Milner, Law and Crimes in-court reporter who was there for every minute of the action. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I feel like a large portion of the beginning of the day, for the first few hours, was dedicated to the prosecution asking her to elaborate and explain her reluctance to engage in these sex acts. And it becomes a question of whether or not it was her as a girlfriend or partner who just didn't want to do this, or, as part of a relationship issue, or whether it was a crime. This was non-consensual, a form of force, fraud, or coercion used to induce her into engaging in commercial sex acts with men in all different cities. So, Elizabeth, what was the testimony from the first few hours today about this reluctance?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of text messages that were shown specifically to the jurors and the witness and the parties. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see them in the gallery because of a pre-existing order whenever Jane was to take the stand, and that has been going on since last week. So we haven't been able to see exhibits, I want to say, since last Thursday, but we're hearing these text messages as AUSA Maureen Comey and even Jane herself are just kind of reading through a number of these text messages, either from her and Diddy, between herself and the escorts. But as far as just her and Diddy goes, right off the bat, as we had started this morning, we see a text message between Jane and Diddy from September 15th of 2023, where Jane was texting Diddy on these different phones because he has more than one phone. And Jane would say, should we start looking for Sunday night flights? And Jane said, love and miss you, mine's forever. And Diddy's responding, send me some SHIT of you being a bad girl. And Jane believed that those messages about her sending him something was for her to send sexually explicit videos to Diddy. And Diddy had responded, when is the earliest you can get here? Jane says that she didn't want to send this particular video, and Diddy said something along the lines of, the F, I'm asking you to do this. I have the phones, and those phones being with the phones that they have of explicit videos together. Diddy said, stop it, don't say no to me. And Jane says, well, I'm traveling with our phone. And Jane says that Diddy would record on his two phones, and then his assistants and staff had easy access to it. So they had this separate phone to record their sexually explicit videos together. And Jane was saying in these messages, that phone doesn't look, and I'm paraphrasing here because they go by so fast when they're kind of saying these out loud. And Jane had said, you're using our vids to get arrested with someone else. And Diddy said, bye, I was asking you to send something, good night. Jane says, well, I'm not going to New York, you're texting me so that way you can get erect for somebody else. And Jane says that she saw on a podcast that he was bragging essentially about having sex for 48 hours completely with someone else. And so Diddy had told her that no sex was involved on this trip, where he was going on this podcast with another person, another woman that Diddy was seeing, and just kind of bragging about this. And this 48-hour trip that he was kind of talking about was on a yacht, and that Diddy told her that he was going to take her on this specific trip, and that Jane agreed to do a hotel night after he had promised her to take her on this trip, and that he ended up not taking her on the trip. So it seems like it's kind of going possibly into the prosecution's argument, which they believe it's sex trafficking by fraud, where he was promising her to do these things and then she would comply with it, but then he would end up not taking her out on special dinners or anything like that. sad. And you kind of can see both sides of this, right? Like, where, okay, is it a crime for a man to lie to you? Not necessarily, but according to the prosecution and their argument, they think because that she was complying and doing these hotel nights, that kind of played into their kind of theory of the case. And so then we see more exhibits, text messages from Jane and Diddy, where Diddy is saying, what happened? I'm sad what happened. Jane is saying, well, I don't want to be used and locked in a room to fulfill your fantasies. We hear about an exhibit from September 16th of that same year of 2023. But this one is a note from Jane's notes app, where she says that she kind of just writes out her feelings similar to diary entries, and then sometimes will kind of copy and paste in them as a text message, where Jane did just that, where she had said, as much as I want to see you, I don't want to be treated like a hoe in a hotel room. And Jane was explaining that she was just writing out her feelings. And so then we hear about more texts between Jane and Diddy, where Jane is saying, I don't want to be used, locked in a hotel room. I'm starting to realize what this is. And Diddy's saying, girl, that was podcast talk. I was alone. I'm tired of your false accusations. I promise on baby love, who is his youngest daughter, I didn't have sex. And Jane was saying that wasn't podcast talk, and saying that you made Papa proud. And this was kind of in reference to this podcast where Diddy was kind of talking about this 48 hours of sex, essentially. And Diddy had said, bye, always tripping around me. And so then we kind of see more text exhibits where Jane was saying that she wanted to go back to when they first started dating. She said, I opened Pandora's box. She can't seem to close it. She said, one night of fun turned into our entire relationship. I'm crying as I'm writing this. And Diddy is responding, stop, girl, let's talk. And then he sends her an audio message. And then Diddy can be heard on this particular audio message. So the jury is hearing this. We're hearing this out loud inside the courtroom, where Diddy has kind of this raspy voice, and he's saying that he was sick in bed. The message you sent me, what's the problem? We have an actual open relationship. What's the problem? And Diddy never brought up kind of her concerns about doing these hotel nights. Instead, he just never talked about it in this particular audio message. And so Diddy ended up calling her on a FaceTime and told her what she wanted to hear. That's what she testified to. And Jane testified, he said a lot of things that I like to hear, that he loves me, that he missed me, that he wanted to see me. And so Jane ended up agreeing to go to New York. And this was a trip to New York in September of 2023, where she thought that she was going just for alone time with her boyfriend. And then what ended up being alone time with her boyfriend actually turned into them messaging Cabral, who was an escort that they had used often in their freak-offs. And then Cabral was flown out from Atlanta, Georgia, over here to New York, and that Jane participated in this freak-off with Diddy and, with Cabral, as Diddy kind of watched. And that was what had ended up happening. And so we saw a lot of text messages where she was really just kind of explaining her frustration as far as why Diddy was treating her this way, and making her out to be kind of someone who was only used to fulfill his fantasies, as opposed to the other women that he was kind of taunting out there, kind of to what she was kind of describing in her face a little bit, where she was kind of kept a secret, and that her job essentially was to hire these other men, or to bring these other men for their hotel nights or debauchery nights. And so we saw a lot of text messages from around that time frame where she seemed to be very vocal about voicing her opinion on that she didn't want to do it. But then I think kind of where that area is where maybe it kind of confused the jury is that even afterwards she still did it. And so I feel like when cross-examination eventually happens, that they'll really kind of be like, okay, well, you continue to do this even after you said you didn't want to do this, and you said this, but you did that. And so overall, a lot of text messages were shown that really kind of voiced Jane's opinion about just not wanting to do these hotel nights anymore.
Yeah, I saw there was some reporting where she allegedly said, I'm not a porn star. These experiences are desensitizing sex for me. It's been 3 years of me having to bleep strangers. There was another, you pair me up with some random man, any bleep for your own sick sexual. And there were parts where it looked, I mean, I wonder if the jury will accept, was he threatening her directly, indirectly? I mean, I believe there was one message, you're burning a bridge that you're going to need tomorrow. And we know that financial.
I mean, how threatening is that? If somebody is using you, tea sippers, okay, sip this tea with me. If somebody is, taking financial support from you, monetary support from you, right, for your living expenses, essentially how you claim you are able to maintain your lifestyle, and you do something that they disagree with, and they say, That's just like, okay, you're at work and you commit, an act against a policy or procedure that goes against the rules of your job. And they say, one more time, I'm going to fire you. Is that threatening on your job? That's crazy that y'all are saying that, because Diddy was like, okay, listen, you don't get your ass back in that bed, I'm not paying your rent next month. Now, I don't know what you think you got going on, but that's what I got going on. And if you want to have what I got going on to work for you, then you do as I say do by 12 o'clock. Or I'm simply not going to, pay your rent or do whatever the hell for you financially. So, I mean, this is crazy, but we're here for it. We are sipping tea with Sidebar, P. Diddy on trial, juror trauma, X, naughty voice notes, week 5.
Control is a big part of this, gifts, cash, rent. But I have to tell you, Elizabeth, my jaw hit the floor. I think a big controversial moment, if we're trying to understand whether or not she was a willing participant or consented to this, didn't she write in a text message to Sean Combs that she consented in the videos of these sexual encounters? Because we know, according to her testimony, that Sean Combs have recorded some certain of these sex acts. And he basically said what? That if people look at these videos, they'll see it was consensual. Didn't she agree with that? Or I might be completely wrong.
So Jane was kind of vocalizing just her displeasure of having to do these wild debauchery nights or hotel nights just with other men, that she always wanted to be having sex with her partner, and her partner being Sean Combs. So she messaged Diddy saying that you place these harmful men on me, and Diddy had responded, well, talk to God, I'm gonna pray for you, you're burning a bridge that you aren't prepared to pay for. And Jane said that in the text that she knew that she had consented to being on this tape, but she said she was uncomfortable, but she kept doing this because she loved Diddy, and that Diddy kind of even threw in her face that she appeared to be enjoying it. She appeared to be excited even while she was on these freak-off tapes or these sexually explicit videos. And Jane says, well, I'm sorry, I want to feel better. And that was in reference to her just feeling uncomfortable throughout this entire process. And so Jane admitted while she was on the stand that she did watch her own freak-off tapes. And she said that I was being high and following a pattern in the majority of these tapes. It was like watching the same show over and over again. And so this was kind of at a point in, I guess, her and Diddy's relationship where she was really just kind of telling him that she didn't want to be doing these hotel nights anymore, and that the videos were kind of thrown back into her face. But it seems like from her perspective, while she was on the stand, I should say, that she didn't feel as comfortable as maybe the video may have portrayed her to look as more comfortable and consenting in this process.
Yeah, I wonder how much the jury is going to wrestle with the idea. Did she vocalize enough her perceived lack of consent? There was a part of it where she talked about in her notes app. Hey, I want to take a quick minute to thank Upside for sponsoring our coverage of Sean Diddy Combs' trial. Now, Upside is amazing. It is a free tank of gas. Today began the cross-examination of key Diddy accuser Jane. The defense questioned her about voice notes, texts, drugs, sexually explicit situations. But the key question was she forced or coerced into sex acts with other men at the request of Sean Combs? Or was this all consensual? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Jane, alleged victim 2 in this case, is now facing questioning from the defense after testifying that she performed sex acts with men for Sean Combs' pleasure, including after she claimed she threw up, after she claimed she was exhausted, after she claimed she repeatedly expressed her reluctance to continuing these hotel nights. She testified that she was subject to Combs' physical violence. After all of this, now she is facing questioning from defense attorney Tenny Garagos. And remember why her testimony is so important, right? It's important for several reasons. For sex trafficking, she claims that she had sexual relations with men in all different locations, who these men were being paid. And if the prosecution can show that she was coerced or forced into these commercial sex acts, that's the key. The prostitution charge her testimony that she was transported to different locations for these hotel nights, that the men were paid through Combs, that their travel to these places was paid and arranged through Combs. That's a more linear way to get to transportation to engage in prostitution. Racketeering conspiracy, the top charge, right? We're talking about an alleged criminal enterprise, criminal association. Well, her testimony arguably supports that by saying that assistants, right, Sean Combs' inner circle set up these nights, that she was a victim of coerced sexual activity. Sex trafficking is an underlying predicate crime of RICO. And generally, the more the prosecution can show a pattern of abuse of women as they outline in their indictment, that helps with the RICO charge. So, what does cross-examination look like? What did the defense try to get at? So for that, let me bring on Long Crimes in-court reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was there for every second of this testimony. And the most important thing, first of all, happy birthday, Elizabeth. It's Elizabeth's birthday. She had to work on her birthday, but worked on such a big case. She was in the courtroom. Elizabeth, happy birthday. Hope you're having an okay birthday so far. I know it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but that's okay. I'd rather spend it with you guys.
Well, that's very kind. And she was getting a lot of love during our lunchtime show today. Everybody was wishing Elizabeth happy birthday. You can check those out up on YouTube as well. Okay, so before we even get into Jane, Elizabeth, a lot of questions that we had, particularly on the lunchtime show, was about what's the status of the defense's mistrial motion. Remember, they basically said that witnesses had perjured themselves on the stand. This was entirely prejudicial. The case should be thrown out right now. And also, there was a conversation about whether Dr. Dawn Hughes, this forensic psychologist who testified about the complicated dynamics and relationship between abusers and victims, whether she will be recalled to the stand. She testified earlier for the prosecution. Does she have to be recalled? Those two issues, real quick, can you give us updates on the mistrial motion and Dr. Dawn Hughes?
Well, after spending an entire day of court, you can kind of possibly guess that the judge did deny that motion for a mistrial, and there was a lot of reasoning behind it. So the defense, as far as the motion being denied, the judge was saying that no interference happened and that the defense was able to undermine the alleged incident, and that being Bonna being allegedly dangled off of the 17-story balcony over at Cassie's condo. And the judge was saying, well, you guys were able to undermine this alleged incident by showing the hotel receipt. And so he said that this isn't fodder for a mistrial, and that the defense can use these exhibits to undermine both Bonna's testimony as well as Cassie's testimony. And so kind of had more discussions about it. And the defense was like, well, we didn't know what Bonna was going to say while she was on the stand, because a lot of their motion for the mistrial really had to do with Bonna's testimony and how they believed that she had perjured herself after getting an immunity deal to testify for the prosecution. But
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.